We need to talk about this can of worms, but not this can of worms. This can of worms. A Disney Channel original movie that I believe is the greatest piece of cinema yet to be created by mankind. Side note, no, I did not order a 12 pack of Worms on a String just to do this joke. It was only mostly to do this joke. I also just think that it makes sense for me to own 12 different colors of Worms on a String. Well, 6 colors, 2 of each. Based on the Amazon reviews, I think I've shown pretty remarkable restraint here in limiting myself to just 12. But you know who doesn't show restraint? Paul Schneider, director of Can of Worms. He really did not hold back in gifting unto us the greatest spectacle one can enjoy on Disney Plus. I really recommend you go and enjoy it for yourself for the first time if you haven't already, but I'm also pretty sure that in videos like this where they tell you to drop everything and go do something else first, basically nobody actually listens. So, fair spoiler warning ahead for all things Can of Worms. If you care, spoiler warning out of the way. Why am I wearing my headphones? I'm not listening to anything. But I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you've already seen Can of Worms. In which case, congratulations. You've been enlightened. And at this point, you probably already know all the reasons I'm about to list as to why Can of Worms is the peak of modern entertainment. But in case you forgot, I'm going to run through the plot of the entire movie real quick. You see, I believe that the plot of Can of Worms can be broken down into 3 acts, each with their own distinct conflict, and I have summarized each one in their own haiku. Mike has a great life, but Scott ruins the school dance that he worked so hard on. He broadcasts to space. Aliens really show up, try to exploit him. Thode kidnaps some kid. They go to its planet to rescue him. Stay saved. Now buckle in, kiddos, because I'm going to speedrun all 3 acts in full detail. Boom! Thunder, lightning. The movie opens with a literal bang as we see the protagonist, Mike Pillsbury, frantically assembling something in the midst of the storm, and then he gives his plea.
Fellow citizens of the galaxy, I do not belong on this planet. I am one of you. I am being held against my will. My potential to realize a happy and fulfilled life nullified by the ignorant and cruel indigenous population of Earth. You must save me. Take me away from this. Desperately in need of your assistance. Mike Pillsbury.
Boop. And then freaking lightning supercharged mega satellite laser. He goes full Victor Frankenstein mode here.
Just come and get me!
If you liked that opening sequence, you're in luck. You'll see what I mean. But for now, we got a flashback to... This is Mike's friend Nick. This is Nick's younger brother Jay. Mike is telling Jay a story about a race of aliens known as the Hansels. Remember that, it's important later. Unfortunately, the Hansels would be...
Doomed! Doomed? Doomed.
Nick is not as impressed as Jay, who...
He thinks the back of a cereal box is like Shakespeare.
But oops, they gotta get to football practice because Mike's dad...
Says it'll be good for my character.
Blam! Did you see that transition? Tell me this isn't peak cinematography. Here is where we are introduced to Mike's love interest in this film, Scott Schreibner. If it weren't for those pesky helmets in the way, those lips would be locked right now. Actually, there are multiple teased love interests, and yes, one of them is head cheerleader Caitlin Sandman, but it's pretty clear from the get-go that Mike and Scott are endgame. I mean, look at how jealous Scott gets when he realizes Mike looked at Caitlin for like 5 seconds. Anyway, Mike gets his big moment when he accidentally catches an interception, but survival instincts kick in and he runs towards the enemy end zone until he gets tackled right into Scott's waiting arms. He hallucinates an alien who seems important but never shows up again for the rest of the film. He ends up heavily concussed, which his family seems alarmingly unperturbed by.
Is he dead? Can I have a CD collection?
That's his sister Jill, by the way. She's great. His dad, on the other hand, ominously declares,
And you will learn from your mistakes.
it's revealed here that Mike is a computer genius because he has a gigantic voice-activated satellite in his yard in the year 1999. And also he knows that...
Bioservice routine is nothing more than an interrupt handler.
Are you sure?
Does a tesseract exist in 4 dimensions?
You are definitely from another planet.
Interesting theory, Jill. We'll get back to that one later. Because, right now, daddy business.
From stocks to stockyards.
Because Mike...
Needed the extra RAM for a little programming project.
because that's how that works. Turns into a heart-to-heart where Mike goes, hey Dad, I gave it a shot, but I really don't like this football thing. But Dad's not having any of it, and he gives Mike a little vocab lesson.
Anything, Mike. That's the word for the day. Anything.
Speaking of lessons, it's time for school, and even Nick is crushing on Scott a little bit.
Scott Schreibner, big man on campus. Muscles, good-looking athlete, computer whiz. How perfect can a guy get?
He is indeed a computer whiz, as we will soon find out. The teacher makes it clear that this is a computer class by announcing in the most extra Hogwarts professor way.
Everybody, boots up.
And then, what? Caitlin decides she'd rather sit in an empty seat next to Mike than on some dude's lap next to Scott? Ooh, Scott didn't like that. And now we have a Western-style floppy disk showdown. This is the actual music in the scene. Now, I think Mike misinterprets Scott's actions here as an attempt to bully him, but I think he's actually just asking him out. I mean, come on. Don't let a good mind go to waste. You can practically see the winky face after that. I'll give it back, you know, on our date. But Mike is having none of it, and in the craziest turn of events, pulls out his own floppy disk. The implication here being that not only did Scott have a program prepared to hack directly into Mike's computer specifically and display his little love letter at the press of a button, but Mike actually anticipated this and had a counterattack ready, even going so far as to make sure the teacher is distracted before deploying his little video. Yeah, I think he noticed. But you know what I noticed? This entire sequence was actually foreshadowed by the iconic stocks to stockyards scene right before this. Clearly, Clip Art Swine is something of a calling card for the mighty Mike Pillsbury. Anyway, Caitlin thinks that move was pretty cool and comes to his house, which Mike doesn't actually believe at first until Jay pumps him up, at which point he immediately books it up there. She asks him to help with the decorations for the Halloween dance.
Yeah, well, why not? Definitely, absolutely.
So that means yes?
Sure does, Caitlin. So, one synth-heavy montage later, they end up with this.
I don't have a huge budget or anything.
Caitlin finds his decorating skills very attractive, but Scott's spidey senses detect that someone else is trying to flirt with his man, and he quickly puts a stop to that. But he's not bold enough to ask Mike out yet, so he asks Caitlin, which gets Mike jealous.
Hey, who said to go with you anyway, Schreibner? I'm busy, you know? I don't have time like you to stuff myself with some greasy hamburger. But you know what? Go ahead. Put on a few, clog up your arteries. Graduate from halfback to fullback.
Ooh, zinger. But remember this argument. It's important later. Anyway, Scott's upset about Mike body shaming him and lashes back out by sabotaging the decorations that he just spent a whole montage putting together.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
We cut back to Mike, who is...
Soldering his cummerbund.
Yes, you heard that right, folks. Mike has...
Lights on a cummerbund.
You like it?
Pretty nifty.
Yeah, this whole scene exists solely to emphasize that Mike has a light-up cummerbund, which is honestly fair because it's probably where a lot of the film's budget went. Anyway, we cut to the dance, and Mike, true Sigma that he is, shamelessly plugs his company over the PA.
This production was brought to you by Mike Pillsbury, Starfield Intergalactic Communications and Entertainment Corporation.
And then he proceeds to summon a bouquet of flowers from nowhere, because he can just do that. Anyway, people are enjoying themselves despite the extremely confused music.
Inequality, let's stay together, let's live in harmony. All alone and I'm bad to the bone.
Ah, yes, the true hallmark of a bad boy, advocating for world peace. But Scott's idiot sidekick gets impatient, perhaps realizing that we are now 30 minutes into the film and have not seen a single alien. He begs Scott to
Push the button. Oh, please push the button.
which he does, and apparently Mike forgot to comment out the decorations.spontaneously combust method, because somehow this one button press causes things to just burst into flames. And tragically, as the computer teacher extinguishes it, Mike's RGB cummerbund gets caught in the crossfire. This is the last straw, and Mike runs away in a true Cinderella moment. Now remember how I said if you liked the intro, you're in luck? Well, this is why, because the first 2 minutes and 16 seconds of this film were actually foreshadowing for the exact same 2 minutes and 16 seconds, frame for frame, literally less than 30 minutes later. So at this point, you know the drill. Hey aliens, pick me up, my life sucks. Frankenstein moment, lightning. His parents, for some reason, are not even a little upset that their son exploded their freaking TV satellite, which, also, that is a gigantic TV satellite. But Mike is upset. He's so upset, in fact, that he tells Jill,
I've lost my will to solve. Sorry.
it's pretty much at this point, 35 minutes into the film, that we finally get to see our first alien, which sends us into Act 2.
How did you get in here, boy?
Please don't touch. My people are a superior race, and we abhor casual contact with primitives.
That's right, everybody. This space dog got neck clips. And also, remember the no touchy thing. It's important later. Anyway, it turns out that Mike's little message in a bottle somehow opened the Stargate. This is the Stargate. Oh yeah, also the dog can teleport, but don't bother remembering that because he never does it whenever it would actually be helpful to do so. Understandably, Mike thinks that he's going crazy, and so he checks under his tongue to make sure he didn't actually fall asleep with a hallucinogen in his mouth. But there's nothing there, so he decides that maybe after a quick meal he'll feel better. Wait a second. Mike? What's that on your plate there? Can we zoom in and enhance, please?
Greasy hamburger.
That's right, Mike Pillsbury is a raging hypocrite, and karma strikes swiftly here because first his burger, then his keyboard are slimily smited from the heavens by the most foul, slimiest, and disgusting creature imaginable, the Boom.
I am what you earthlings call a lawyer.
Ah, good one. Lawyers, bad, evil, funny. I do want to point out that this is genuinely one of the coolest puppets I've ever seen, with the whole inflating and deflating mechanisms going on there. The effects artist who worked on the puppets for this film was also responsible for things like Slimer from Ghostbusters and The Wild Things from Where the Wild Things Are. His YouTube channel has some of the only behind the scenes footage I can find of Can of Worms. So that's been pretty cool to explore. So at this point, Caitlin calls to apologize, but Mike is understandably distracted by the alien attorney that is eating his dinner, and Caitlin gets upset, which I feel is entirely unjustified. Mike ends up trying to tell Nick that there are freaking aliens in his room, but he believes...
You puked up your room and now you gotta make up a story.
Which, like, if that's what you actually think happened, laughing at Mike is a pretty evil way to react in this situation. So Barnabas, the Necklip space dog, shows up again and explains that because he was able to communicate with the rest of the universe, Mike and the rest of humanity no longer qualify as primitive life, and that now they've lost certain legal protections. So he tries to convince Mike to seek space asylum, but he ends up getting very alarmed when Mike tells him that the BOEM has already showed up.
Oh, I was afraid of this. Mike Pillsbury, you have opened up a can of worms.
That's the title. That's the name of the movie. That's the can of worms. The movie. He said it. He said the thing. Mike is like, fine, I'll go, but let me go say sorry to Caitlin first, which, in my opinion, is unnecessary because he did nothing wrong. Here's where we meet the alien so prominently featured in the marketing materials. Potentially the most powerful being in the universe. Loafer Alien. That's what he's referred to as in the credits because he doesn't get a name, but he wears loafers. He's an alien. Loafer Alien. This guy is an overambitious TV executive who wants Mike to star in his own reality show. He also happens to possess the ability to fictionalize, which apparently means he can do whatever he wants as long as he kind of sneezes with his eyeballs. This includes telekinesis, stopping time, teleporting. Luckily, nothing Mike can't overcome by grabbing hold of those thick eye stalks. Oh, but wait. Oh man, now that they teleported while time was frozen, Caitlin thinks he ding-dong ditched. Anyway, Mike is all sad and feels like he doesn't belong on the planet, so he asks,
Would you tell me if I were adopted?
Even if you were adopted, we would love you just as much.
If?
You're not adopted. He's not adopted.
You told me he's adopted.
Jill, what do we say about empathy?
Okay.
evil. Psychopath. I love it. No headway made there, and Nick still doesn't believe that aliens are... Oh. Okay, now he believes it. We meet some fun new characters in this scene, such as the Jarm, inventor of the Jarmonica, which I think is like a riff on the Wantzler, and is Thneed from the Lorax. An odd and subtle reference, but to be expected from a film as culturally aware as this one. There's also this alien, who I really hope is also an alien teenager, because otherwise she is just a predator. And this thing in a jar that just sits there, which is sad, because it's also a really cool puppet. Mike decides to go with them, but not before Caitlin shows up, because he left his coat in front of her door. Sorry, Caitlin, you're too late, because I'm gonna go to another planet. What? I'm so confused, I'm going to just stay inside your house now. He's about to choose who to go with when...
Run for the hills!
What was that? Aliens?
Yep, aliens. Get with the program, Caitlin. But I still don't really understand. Why did they
run?
A Thode?
Oh, okay. So a Thode is apparently some intergalactic exotic zookeeper who captures unique specimens to collect them. Luckily, its Stargate apparently takes a long time to open, and so they have time to run. And luckily, it's really late at night, so Nick's little brother Jay is probably in bed by now, and there's absolutely no reason why he would come over in the dark to his brother's friend's house, completely unsupervised, and climb into the glowing treehouse where the evil alien that kidnaps other alien species is about to appear. Is what you'd think, but Can of Worms goes above and beyond by subverting our expectations once again. So obviously it's time to hatch a rescue plan. Barnabas points out that Jay is kind of a lame specimen, and so the Thode will probably come back to catch the perfect specimen. To which Mike says, perfect specimen, eh? I got one I've been keeping my eye on for a while now. So they decide to convince Scott to help them in the most deranged way possible by forcing Nick to put on a pig mask like a freaking serial killer and break into Scott's house, smother him in his sleep before revealing, it's just a prank, bro. Somehow Scott doesn't instantly murder Nick on the spot, and Nick says Mike is challenging him to a duel or whatever, and for some reason Scott, who was just woken up by someone sneaking into his room and almost murdering him, agrees to come along. Oh yeah, Scott. Aliens are real, and this dog has neck lips, so you can believe us. Sweet. Can I touch him? No. At this point, they reveal the plan.
What do I have to do exactly?
Just be yourself.
What does that mean?
Means just be perfect.
Riding on the high of his beloved Mike admitting that he thinks he's perfect, Scott agrees and gets sucked into the Thode dimension, which is a replica of Mike's backyard, inside of a bubble inside the set of a Jurassic Park knockoff. I'm guessing that the movie that rented the studio before them had been that, and the producers were just like, hey, wait, we can use this. Don't tear it down just yet. So they follow through the Stargate and start enjoying the zoo. They check out the Hell exhibit featuring a rock monster from Lego Power Miners, and hey, remember that thing I told you to remember at the beginning? It's the Hansels from Mike's story that he told. How did he know they were real? Was Mike really an alien all along and Jill was right? Why are they wearing oven mitts? Were they baking a cake before the Thode kidnapped them? Is the cake ruined now, or is it maybe still salvageable if they make it in time? All these questions get answered about the same amount in the remainder of the film. Finally, they find Scott and Jay, and the Thode reveals itself to be this guy. Except not really. He can apparently shapeshift and just decided to look like a guy for 20 seconds for no real reason. They trap him in a cage and take the key from literally around his neck. They have no idea how it works, but luckily, the Hansel does. And luckily, Mike can communicate telepathically with the Hansels, likely due to his innate magical abilities, such as summoning bouquets of flowers from thin air. So Mike frees everyone, and woohoo! The day is saved!
Wait! Why isn't the Stargate disappearing?
Oh no! You can't close a Stargate
If there's someone or something still traveling in it, right?
Oh. Yeah, that was a bit of an oversight.
Hell hath no fury like a Thode scorned.
So they decide to call the police, but
Mine is busy. It's a dangerous universe.
so instead they're forced to stall the Thode themselves.
On this planet, we eat frog legs!
Eat legs, you say? Good idea. So they all have to hold on to Mike to keep him from being dragged away. Barnabas even gets in there a little bit and kind of barks at him. Just in the nick of time, the police arrive. What, officer? Is it a crime to have your tongue wrapped around a kid's ankles? The Thode is arrested, and Barnabas drops this bit of wisdom.
Sometimes you have to act a little primitive if it will help a friend.
Thanks, Barnabas.
Finally, it's time to wrap things up, and Barnabas arrives to tell Mike that his plea in Space Court was successful, and Earth is once again considered home to primitive life. So, aliens will never bother anyone, ever again.
That's pretty. You've shown me there's something to be said for the right kind of personal contact. I will attempt to convince my people.
He offers Mike one last chance to go to space, but he says,
Earth is my home, and even though it doesn't always feel like it, I guess it's where I belong.
on the football field, by Scott's side. The end. Unfortunately, further Can of Worms media is difficult to find. But fear not, my fellow Can fans, because there is one very important piece of media that we still have yet to discuss. You see, the hit 1999 Disney Channel original film Can of Worms, starring Michael Schulman as Michael Pillsbury, was actually based on a novel that was published just 4 months before the movie came out. That itself is more evidence that Can of Worms is the most impressive creative endeavor of all time. I mean, it took over 300 years for Disney to adapt Cinderella into a movie. That means Can of Worms was 900 times faster. There are a few notable differences in the novel. Yeah, obviously spoilers for that too are up ahead. It is available for one person at a time to check out for up to 14 days on archive.org if you're interested. And I know you are. Don't worry, I'll leave a link in the description. Spoilers start now. First difference of note, Mike's name is actually Albert Michael Pillsbury, but he still goes by Mike. I think that's really funny personally, but I'm not a fan of Scott's last name being Schreiber without the N. After hearing the malice with which Michael Schulman repeatedly utters
Schreiber.
I'm kind of attached to that variation, so I'm glad they changed it for the film. Caitlin Sandman is just Caitlin Sands. Also, interestingly, Mike and Jill have swapped ages, so Mike is in 7th grade and Jill is in high school. Also, the rest of Mike's classmates are the same age as him. Scott is no longer a computer genius, on top of being Jock Lord Supreme. In this book, his sidekick has the brains instead of whatever he had in the movie. Except his sidekick also basically disappears after the one floppy disk duel scene in the book. In the book, there's also a lot more detail about the Hansels, who in this version have the ability to fly and breathe underwater, which seems like a weird mix. They look pretty much completely human, unlike in the film. So because of this, there's a lot more overt speculation about whether Mike actually is a Hansel. And in this version, it's almost confirmed, because Mike also learns at the perfect moment in this book that he also has the ability to fly and also understand the Hansel's language, which nobody else can do. Barnabas is different in this adaptation too. He looks like a poodle, and he's from Sirius instead of Puppis. And also he's considerably grumpier. Instead of a Thode, it's a Jong, who you may remember as the antagonist of the Hansel Chronicles Mike tells at the beginning of the film. If you watch the film, I didn't actually say that. To be honest, I don't know why they changed that for this movie. It's basically the exact same thing, except he's a snake instead of a frog. I guess a frog costume is easier to make or something. Also in the book, he gets hit in the face with a frisbee and straight up dies, which is a difference. Jay is some random little kid instead of Nick's brother, but he gets abducted the same way. Nick doesn't actually go with them in their face-off against the Jong, which is a shame, but Caitlin is actually integral to the plan this time, because she is the bait instead of Scott, and she's the one who comes up with the whole plan. You see, in this version, for some reason, the Jong needs a male and a female specimen from each species, which has disturbing implications that luckily are not explored further in the book. There was also this really nice tie-in to the conflict of Act 1, where all the freed aliens are now just here in the middle of a football field where Caitlin got abducted, and so they need a way for Barnabas to sneak them out amidst the growing crowd. So they quickly repurpose their planned Halloween decorations to host Ashby's first annual Halloween parade, and everyone just presumes the aliens are really good costumes. And then there's this cute scene at the end where all the new friends meet up in the treehouse. Even Scott shows up, and Mike tells him to beam yourself up, Scotty, which is actually the second Scotty beam me up reference in this book. And everyone lives happily ever after. The end. Except it isn't. No doubt fueled by the storm of popularity brought on by the resounding success of the film, Catherine Mackle would go on to write 2 more books in the series. Eggs in One Basket and From the Horse's Mouth. Gonna go ahead and spoil those 2, read them first if you want. The second book, Eggs in One Basket, stars Scott as the protagonist. Some of the other characters make a return too, namely Mike and Nick, though Mike is way more annoying in this book, and Nick doesn't really do anything except get punched in the face. Even he got more than Caitlin, though, who is for some reason nowhere to be seen outside of a couple passing references. She's kind of almost replaced by a new character, Stacia Carviello, a rich and world-famous violinist in their grade who is referred to as Weird Band Girl about as often as her actual name. Like in Scott's thoughts and also out loud to her face. It gets to the point where he even occasionally abbreviates it to WBG and you just know what it is because he repeats it so often. And even Mike for some reason calls her that too near the end of the book. As far as I know, he hasn't even heard Scott call her that. Barnabas also couldn't make it for this book, so they sent in his beefier friend Ditka, who is pretty much just as useless. The first thing I noticed about this book is that it is way more intense than the first one. Like, in the first book they still almost die, yeah, but in a very PG, oh, I might fall really far, that's pretty scary, but not that gruesome at least, kind of way. In this one, Scott gets his neck and face sliced open by evil dagger-fingered aliens called shards, like, multiple times. Also in this one, Scott discovers that he is the one who has mysterious alien powers, because he can fly. Except later he discovers it's not really flying, just jumping really high. Whoa. Except for that part early in the book where he accidentally levitated a foot above the chair he'd been sitting in. See, this book is full of those little inconsistencies that make it clear that, yeah, this was probably pretty rushed. I mean, it came out just a year after the movie, so it was very clearly trying to capitalize on the little bit of buzz that being a Disney Channel original movie brought to it. Despite all that, it does do some pretty interesting things. Scott obviously has some character flaws, but since the events of the last book, he is actively working on bettering himself. So when he starts having weird visions and manifesting superpowers and for some reason is filled with a blind rage anytime Stacia touches a musical instrument in like a 2-mile radius of him, he's understandably a little shaken up by that. I feel like this book has a much more interesting interpretation of the whole protagonist trying to juggle their normal 7th grade concerns with their alien conspiracy ones. Also, the alien plot is way cooler in this one. Basically, the shards, who are these evil regenerating crystal life forms, are after the Lyras, who are ancient bird aliens, because the Lyra's songs have the very OP power of persuasion, which is like musical mind control, basically, and they want to use them as a weapon to take over the galaxy. Lark is a Lyra who fled, crashed on Earth, and hid her unhatched eggs inside of a tree. Get it? Eggs in one basket it's a little on the nose. And for some reason, Scott and Stacia are the chosen ones who can hear the music of the eggs, which gives them a kind of empathy link with one another, but in a very negative feedback kind of way, where if any of them tries to make music, it sounds terrible to specifically each other. And also their emotions make the same kind of screech when they get too intense. But then when they finally save Lark, balance is restored and Stacia gets the power of persuasion from her own music instead. Much more interesting than, I want to make a private space zoo. Much like the first book, it ends in a football game and everyone walks away happy again. Except Caitlin, she's still gone. Which brings us to the third and final book, and for once, Nick is the star of the show. Nick, whose whole thing in the first book was being, understandably, a little bit miffed that he got left out of all the cool alien stuff, and then in book 2, literally just being Scott's punching bag. Well, now he has cool alien stuff. Take that, Albert Michael Pillsbury. This time, there's a time travel unicorn called a Zephyr and a fire-breathing army that wants to control it so they can take over the galaxy. Go figure. Apparently there's also a race of super lazy, super hungry creatures that kind of don't do much except when they ride on top of the Zephyrs, they fuse into one super powerful being and they can do stuff like control the time travel, which the Zephyrs can't do on their own, I guess. Much like the previous book, it's the whole alien hiding on Earth and bad guy aliens chasing it thing. Except this time the gimmick is that the Zephyr randomly launches the protagonists into the future. From their point of view, they jump forward to a moment several hours in the future where time stays frozen to them until they've waited the same amount of time that passed. Obviously, other people notice them disappearing for hours on end from all existence, and so that tends to land them in trouble in their normal lives, such as the first time this happens to Nick, when he walks into the girls' locker room and heroically decides not to creep on them. But time unfreezes while he's still in there and he gets in trouble. So just off to a really great start there. I want to note that Caitlin again gets done dirty here because literally all she does in this entire book is tell Nick that she's glad that he wasn't a pervert. Once Mike explains the time travel shenanigans, which I don't think is even justified because he really didn't have to go in there in the first place, and he was heavily considering spying on them anyway, but I digress. The other way this book leverages time travel is to have even more violence than the previous book, because in the ending, when the day is saved, it all gets time traveled away anyway, so a homeless shelter full of children and their families gets lit on fire while they're still inside on Christmas. Also, Mike himself gets burned alive and writhes on the ground in agony for a while. And Jill gets thrown into a wall and splits her head open, nearly dying of blood loss. Oh yeah, Jill. See, the book continues the sort of obnoxious, obligatory romance thing in a weird way by this time pairing Nick up with Mike's sister Jill, which is perhaps a little strange considering their ages. Aside from that, there's not too much to note in this book. They continue the trend of having a new dog in each book. This time it's a little chihuahua named Titan. Hate him. Nick doesn't even get any inexplicable maybe alien powers. If anything, Mike gets the powers, again, with this vague implication that his telepathy trick that he pulled with the Hansels in book 1 might just be something he can always do. The gimmick of the gang having to explain their impromptu time travel is kind of fun. But aside from that, it's all very predictable and or just a little weird off through the whole thing. Though I will say, I can't have imagined a more fitting ending than Nick getting punched in the face again. Now, this is truly where the official Can of Worms content comes to an end, unfortunately. The author did write one other book featuring aliens about a kid chasing his lifelong dream of becoming a glass blower. But the blurb doesn't directly imply any connection to the canon of Worms, so I didn't read it. Isn't it a shame, though, that we only have 3 books in a TV movie? I mean, truly, there is a font of untapped potential in the Can of Worms IP. And since the only Can of Worms fan fiction I could find was this, basically just the plot of Can of Worms, but they replaced the main character names with characters from My Hero Academia, I was forced to dream up my own ideas for what could have been. Starting with the obvious, adaptations of the 2 other books. I mean, the plot's already done, but what about the casting? I'm going to make a bold move here and say we got to keep all the original cast. I mean, the film is already just perfection. You're not going to get a better cast than these folks. But there are still a few new characters that we need to cast. For Stacia Caraviello, I'm going to cast Taylor Dooley, best known for her role as Lava Girl in The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl 3D, and also that Netflix kind of sequel thing that I haven't watched. I mean, I just think that she has the intensity and the emotional depth to represent a main character who gets referred to by an insult more often than her actual name. For the big bad shard, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Enough said. I could cast Ditka and Titan for that matter, but instead I think I'm just going to replace those characters with Barnabas again, because I really like his voice, and there was honestly no reason not to have Barnabas in the first place anyway. If you're going to have a dog with neck lips, I mean, it's got to be Barnabas. Lark, the beautiful, fragile alien whose voice is so lovely that it can influence anyone to do her bidding. I mean, there's clearly only one person who can fit this role, and he's sitting in my lap right now. That's right. It's upside down. It's Danny DeVito. All day. Every day. As Lark. Up next, the big bad alien in the 3rd book who disguises as a human for most of the time and makes Nick jealous by flirting with Jill, except he won't do that now because we're getting rid of the Nick-Jill romance thing in the film. Yeah, this guy, I think I would cast Dwayne The Rock Johnson. The Zephyr, which is the unicorn alien, is going to be Rowan Atkinson, the actor for Mr. Bean. Except it's not going to be a real horse or CGI. It's just going to be Rowan Atkinson with a horn duct taped to his head crawling around on the ground. And finally, as Burlap, who is one of the lazy alien guys that fuse with the Zephyr in the end, I would cast myself, because all he does in the book is eat a bunch of lettuce and then turn into a badass time travel knight, and I, for one, think I'm pretty capable of doing that. But we can't stop there. Now that we have the movies out of the way, we naturally move on to a TV series. So if you've ever seen the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, I'm envisioning a situation kind of like that, where you have a live action subplot that serves as kind of a softer transition out of commercial breaks, and then the meat of the show is in the animated main plot. It would be called Can of Worms, The Hansel Chronicles. The live action part would be Mike and friends, hanging out in the treehouse, dealing with some light-hearted alien shenanigans, maybe a few celebrity guests, definitely some cool puppets, meaningless computer jargon. But the idea is that Mike is telling the stories that are the main plot, the animated part of each episode. Okay, yeah, okay. Now bear with me. Can of Worms on Broadway. The dramatic intro, that's a musical number. The Hansel Chronicles in the Treehouse, that can be a mysterious sounding musical number with snide comedic interruptions from Nick. The football players have a musical number called Kill, 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 with Mike begging for his life woven throughout. The Wild West Computer Duel is a song that absolutely slaps for no reason. The decorations montage all the way through Scott's Sabotage all spans one musical number. There's Mike opening the Stargate. Same exact musical number from earlier. They're going to get a lot of practice with that one. All the aliens will get a musical number, except Lula. She creeps me out. Mike asking Scott for help will get a song called Perfect, which is even more romantic tension than the original scene. The climactic battle with the Thode definitely gets a long number interspersed with dialogue and action sequences. And of course, the final uplifting number as Mike and Scott march arm in arm onto the football field. Dream On.
It's Dream On, Pillsbury. Dream On.
Can of Worms merch. I'm talking t-shirts, hats, pins, underwear, action figures, Funko Pops. I want a real-life, usable Jarmonica. I want neck lip collars that you can put on your dog to make them sound like Barnabas. I want a microwave meal of the slime-covered cheeseburger that betrayed Mike's blatant hypocrisy. I want one of those cheesy digital greeting cards where you can put your friend's face on a pig and get a link to share it with your friends on Facebook. Boom! Okay, we've hit critical mass. Can of Worms is officially mainstream enough that it gets its own video game. You can now travel through the Stargates to face off against the many threats of the universe, complete with excessively graphic visuals for when you get burned alive by aliens and are forced to scream in agony on the ground for several minutes at a time until a unicorn shows up to kiss it better. IGN gives it a 97, a little something for everyone. Can of Worms is big at this point. It's all anyone's talking about. There's a Can of Worms podcast where the stars of the show, no pun intended, discuss their roles and also recent UFO sightings. The stars have been on every major talk show multiple times. Barnabas and his neck lifts were an especially big hit. At this point, it's time to start talking crossovers. It starts small, you know, Bill Nye, the science guy. At this point, he's become a cyborg so that he can live forever and deliver educational content to every generation for the rest of eternity. He invites Michael Schulman onto the show to give some wacky space facts before he has to run away because a boom shows up. Silly little cameo, right? Mike Pillsbury appears in the next Marvel movie. Remember, this is technically a Disney IP. Looks like Mike got in an argument with the Loafer alien and he fictionalized Mike right into the Marvel multiverse. Now he's become the new CEO of Stark Industries because he's just that big brain. And he meets up with the Guardians of the Galaxy to make a new Stargate and pull his friends into the world with him. At this point, everything goes insane. Nick is endorsing Doritos. Stacia Caraviello is endorsing Evian or something. They're fighting Thodes in Doctor Who. They're selling Jarmonicas in Hogsmeade Village in the new Harry Potter show. It's season 12 of Stranger Things. They still haven't killed the big bad or any of the main characters who have been around for more than a season, and Barnabas shows up from its non-profit space organization to save the day. Scott Schreibner gets invited to Super Smash Bros. They're in Fortnite. In fact, they renamed Fortnite to Can of Worms Fortnite Battle Royale. Have we gone too far? Does a Tesseract exist in No, yeah, it does. I want it to be no. Does a Tesseract exist in 3 dimensions? No. We are approaching the singularity. Absolute perfection in the media and in our very lives. There will never be anything as good as Can of Worms, so everything should be Can of Worms. We should all be Can of Worms. You should be Can of Worms. Why are you not Can of Worms? Kathy Mackle, Disney execs, Mickey Mouse himself. If any of you guys like the direction I'm headed with this, hit me up. I'm willing to collaborate. I'll be awaiting your response in the comments down below. As for the rest of you, I hope I've been able to open your eyes to what is likely the greatest creative achievement of our species as a whole. Take care, my fellow Can fans. It's a dangerous universe out there, so stay safe out there.
The house transmission, everybody write your decision. Fix in equality. Let's stay together, let's live in harmony. All alone and I'm bad to the bone.
Push the button. No, please push the button.